Okay, right. We should be there then. So, good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear us. If someone can give me a thumbs up just to let me know that you can hear us loud and clear. And I'll wait for that because everyone's going, oh, someone else will do that. Hang on. Let me just double check that. Let me just check. Right. Oh, good. Right. Thanks, Richard, and everyone else. Brilliant. Okay, so this evening, the weather outside makes it a really good excuse to sit indoors, and another really good excuse is we've got this fantastic talk this evening on hummingbirds of the world. So, introducing Rob Williams. Rob is a conservation biologist who specialises in South America. We're lucky to have him on this evening, and he's speaking to us from Panama, having just scuttled down a mountain to make sure that he was back in the hotel in time to talk to us. So I'll hand over to you, Rob. Really looking forward to this. Folks, as usual, if you've got questions, pop them in the chat and we'll deal with them at the end. If you don't know how to get into the chat, if you log in with your Gmail into YouTube, you'll be able to join in the chat and post any questions there. So thanks very much, Rob, and I'll shut my camera down because they don't want to look at me; they want to look at you.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak to you again. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk about one of my favorite subjects. So I hope you can all hear me. And I'm going to talk to you tonight a bit about hummingbirds and look at their origins, ecology, and their diversity. It's the second most diverse bird family on the planet. And so completely confined to the New World. And yeah, we'll take a little wander through the wonderful world of hummingbirds now. So, I mean, they really are incredible birds. I'll let you take a moment to read this by the great uh, um, ornithologist and naturalist Alexander Skutch. But basically, it is amazing that these tiny little things, they've got a heart, they've got lungs, they've got ovaries or testes, they've got kidneys, they've got a digestive system, they've got a brain. It's all packed into a thing that can, at the small end of the scale, half the weight of a dry tea bag. And you've got this flying thing that's half the weight of a dry tea bag, doing everything we can do, basically, all the functions of a body like us. So really, it is pretty amazing that amongst the little things, the warm-blooded animal that size, it's almost unparalleled. Some of the very small pygmy shrews and things, and some of the very small bats are similar, but it is pretty amazing. So I want to talk to you about what hummingbirds are. And it's very interesting that they sit in a clade called the Strissores. And the Strissores is a clade of mainly night birds to begin with. So you've got nightjars, oilbirds, potus, frogmouths, owlet nightjars. And then at the end, you've got the apodiforms, which are the tree swifts, swifts, and hummingbirds together. So we'll just have a quick wander through these. And so the Strissores, you can see there's these groups here, these families. With quite a lot of species in some, like nightjars and swifts, quite diverse. But then hummingbirds, 366 species, massively more diverse. The other thing that's really interesting here is that 5 of those groups are strictly nocturnal. And they're nocturnal, aerial, including saline, the frogmouths and the potus, invertebrates, and even some vertebrates. Oil bird's a bit weird. It's an aberrant one. It eats fruit with echolocation, but it's an aerial feeder and it's nocturnal. And then at the end, the apodiformes, you've got these 3 families, the tree swifts, swifts, and hummingbirds that have become diurnal again. And they're all aerial feeders. And the first 2, the tree swifts and swifts, are carried on eating invertebrates. And then suddenly you got to switch to nectar. And so it's quite interesting how in this group, the Strissores, you've got these very brown birds. So let's just have a look through. Here's 4 nightjars taken kind of at random. grays, browns, blacks and whites predominating depending on the substrate they're on. We all know nightjars. Here's oilbird, very brown, nocturnal, listed in caves. Here's three potus, grays, browns, and blacks and whites again, but very little color. Again, frogmouths. Here's Hogston's frogmouth, the male with the chick on the nest and the female roosting nearby. Completely different color phrases, but again, we're going grays, browns, and blacks. Here's barred owlet nightjar from New Guinea. Again, very gray brown. Here are tree swifts. So we're coming into the apodiforms now. A little tiny bit of color appearing, but not much really. It's still browns, grays, a little bit of sort of blue sheens and that rufous on the cheek of the whiskered tree swift. And that's on a nest there. You can see a very small cup nest, very similar to a hummingbird. Then you've got the true swifts. Again, we all know swifts, browns, blacks, grays, with white rumps and collars and things. So where do we get these incredible colorful birds from in that group? So the common ancestor of the swifts and the hummingbirds comes from 52 million years ago. The specimen was found in Wyoming, and it's an intermediate bird between swifts and tree swifts. We won't worry about all the details. We could talk about it for half an hour. I put a reference down there for a very interesting paper if you want to read about it. But this is the point where there's the divergence 52 million years ago. And then the first true hummingbird is actually from Europe. The earliest specimens, Eurotrochilus, two species in the genus Eurotrochilus, which means the European hummingbird. The first one was Inexpectatus, the unexpected European hummingbird, in its scientific name, was found in the Mosul pit, just south of the city of Frankfurt, a great fossil site in Germany. But there are now specimens from Poland and France as well. And these, they clear adaptations for hovering flight and nectivity. Quite a long bill, 15 to 20 millimeters, and the maxillary processes, the bones, are separated as in modern hummingbirds. So it had a protractile tongue for feeding as a modern hummingbird. This was a hummingbird, and at that time, 28 to 34 million years ago, there was a large inland sea in southern Europe with warm forest around it. And so it was believed that with a pretty stable climate, we didn't have the extreme winters and summers we get now. And so it's a kind of permanent Mediterranean climate. And in Europe, you can still find plants that seem to have evolved for hummingbird pollination. And what's happened as hummingbirds went extinct in Europe is that there are now bee species that have evolved very long tongues to pollinate these plants that seem to have evolved for bird pollination by hummingbirds in Europe. So somehow the hummingbirds got back to the New World. It wasn't so far in those days. And we've got our common ancestor of modern hummingbirds from 22.5 million years ago. And we know they got to South America by about 22 million years ago. So they were over into the southern US, around the Caribbean area, that what was there, very different to what it is now, about 22.5 million years ago, and then reached South America by about 22 million years ago. And then there has been an absolute explosion in radiation. They've diversified into 9 clades, primarily in the South American lowlands, but also with the rising of the Andes. The rising up of the Andes mountains are a very young mountain chain. Since the mid-Miocene, they've been coming up very fast. And it has led to an absolutely incredible diversification of hummingbirds. It's probably the fastest diversifying bird family on the planet. Prediction is in another million years, there will be about double the number of species that there are now. And then from this radiation in Northern and South America, they've moved back into Central and North America and the Caribbean. But we'll look at where the diversity is really now. So basically, the diversity is higher at lower latitudes. So the nearer to the equator you are, the higher the diversity. The diversity is higher in more humid regions. So that's oceanic currents, etc., come into play for creating those areas. Diversity is higher in montane areas. It seems like the peak diversity is about 2,000 meters in the Western Andes of Ecuador. Highly, very, very humid. It's part of the Choco biogeographical region. Very humid, tropical forest in tropical montane areas, 2,000 meters right on the equator. So this results in that four countries, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Venezuela, all northern Andean countries of northern South America, have over 100 species. Here's a bit of a graphic showing the diversity of hummingbirds by country. So you can see Canada's got 11 in North America. North America's got 127 in total, which is all the way down to Panama, where I'm speaking to you from. And you can see that number increases. Bearing in mind, there's a bit of fluctuation depending on country size and how mountainous those countries are in the small countries in Central America. North America, the United States is slightly aberrant because there are so many birders there. They get quite a few vagrant hummingbirds from Central America and Mexico creeping across the border, which kind of inflates their numbers slightly. But you look at South America and you've got that arc from Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, all over 100 species. Brazil, much bigger, very, very high diversity in Brazil, but it doesn't have the Andes Mountains, so only the 80 odd. So, and then as you go south to Argentina and Chile, Argentina, quite a few because it's much more humid. Chile, very arid, only 9 species, although 2 endemic species. So around the Caribbean, not huge numbers, higher numbers nearer to the coast of South America. So Trinidad and Tobago with 17, the Bahamas with 6, and then the other islands. Puerto Rico is a kind of interesting one with 7 because it gets the greater Antillean diversity, but it also reaches the top end of the lesser Antillean diversity of about 6 species scattered through the Lesser Antilles. So what are we looking at in hummingbirds? So we got these 9 clades of hummingbirds, and we can look at this graph, which shows in millions of years ago the diversification points. And you can see the diversification of the common ancestor about 22 million years ago, and then these really fast radiations about 15 million years ago, this massive Andean radiation, the Andean clade going there. And then things like the bees and emeralds, which went further north. You can see by the color, the black bars on the right show when they're in North America. The red is the Caribbean. So there's been multiple colonizations of the Caribbean and North America. But really, it's especially the mountain gems, the bees, and the emeralds that have gone north. The other diversification, with the exception of a few of the mangoes that got into the Caribbean and up into Central America, really has stuck in South America. So here are the 9 family, 6 subfamilies and 9 groupings, including some tribes because they're so distinctive, showing the continents they're in. So you can see not very many in North America, quite a few in Central America, the Caribbean, a few, but it's really South America that takes the diversity. So let's just work through those. So one of the oldest groupings, the first branch off from the hermits was the topazes, the Florisuginnae. There are only 2 genera and 4 very different species. One of these, the white-necked jacobin, this is the most widespread of these species, does go up into Middle America, but the others are confined to South America, and they're all birds of humid tropical lowland forests. Then we got the hermits, the Phaethornithidae. This is a lovely subfamily of very unique, very dull colored, really, lowland forest interior hermits, hummingbirds. And they tend to feed by trap lining, which is going circuits round flowers. They have dispersed leks. And the peak diversity of this is in South America, quite a few going up into Middle America, and just a single species that creeps out onto a couple of Caribbean islands, the close ones to Venezuela, basically. Then we got the mangoes, the Polytiminae, 12 genera and 30 species. And you can see here quite a few getting into Middle America. and one into North America proper, but most of the diversity around South America, but quite a few getting into the Caribbean. This is one of those groups that managed to get out there and spread around a bit more. The coquettes and allies, the Lesnini, this is a fantastic little group of birds. We'll talk a bit more about their kind of special ecology later on. Really South America, just a few creeping into Middle America. Big radiation in South America of these very small, beautiful birds. The brilliants, quite big hummingbirds, strong flyers, forest birds from, again, mostly South America, couple going up into Middle America, only just around Panama and up into Costa Rica and things. Giant hummingbird. This is one genus and either a single species or probably two species. There's a migratory one and which was described in 2024, but hasn't yet been sort of fully accepted. I think it's a good split. I've thought that for about 10, 15 years that it deserved to be separated. The world's largest hummingbird, about the size of a starling in length, weighing up to 20 grams. And then you've got the mountain gems. This is a real Central American clade. A few creep into South America. The star throats basically go into South America, which in this clade, the true mountain gems are Central America and North America. And then the bee hummingbirds. These are the tiniest ones, including the famous bee hummingbird from Cuba, the smallest bird in the world. A big diversity and spread from north right down through to South America. So really one of the most sort of evenly distributed groups across that northern range. And then the emeralds, a very diverse group, 115 species, 36 genera. Again, mostly South America, but lots up into Middle America, a few getting into North America and the Caribbean as well. So that's the group. So what are hummingbirds doing? Well, they're primarily nectarivorous. All species, though, will also take small invertebrates. They generally catch them on the wing when they are taking invertebrates. There are some that will glean from leaves, and some will even take things out of spiders' webs. So, but mostly 80, 90% of their energy is coming from nectar. Depending on the species, it varies slightly. And they have evolved, and the plants have evolved in a mutualistic way to produce bills on the hummingbirds that enable them to feed in the plants, and for the plants, flowers that attract hummingbirds and are efficient pollinating mechanisms for the plant. So there's many different bill sizes and different strategies for different habitats and different plant species. So this is a swallow-tailed hummingbird in Brazil, feeding on a nice little tubular corolled flower. Red, classic hummingbird flowers, often red. Here's this, just to give you a range of the bill sizes. This is the bird with the shortest bill, about 9 millimeters. This is a blackback thorntail, which is endemic to the Santa Marta Mountains of Colombia. And this is the longest bill length of all hummingbirds, the longest proportional bill length of any bird in the world. The bill length can nearly equal the body length. It actually can exceed the body length if you don't include the end of the tail feathers, but nearly, and this is the fabulous sword-billed hummingbird, which is in the Andes and is a specialist on passiflora flowers, those big, long, tubular ones, and that genus that used to be called Datura, it's much more complicated than that, but we'll just call it X Datura. So here's another hummingbird. This is the Tolima blossom crown. This is a Colombian endemic that inhabits quite a small area in the Tolima Valley, around the Tolima volcano in central Colombia. And here it is pollinating a flower. So you can see it reaching right in. And you can see on the flowers where the corollas have dropped off, you can see this the stigma there for depositing pollen onto the bird. And here's a giant hummingbird of the resident subspecies or species that occurs in Peru, feeding at a large puya flower spike. And it's just pulling out of that flower, and you can see pollen flying everywhere. and its bill absolutely covered in pollen. And a lot of birds, the hummingbirds, they have a little depression between the eyes at the top of the beak where the pollen sits very well. Here's a bronzy inca absolutely covered in pollen again. There are some birds that cheat the system. This is a Jeffroy's daggerbill. Uh, Jeffroy's daggerbill has a very sharp, pointy bill, a short bill, and it pierces at the base of the flower and doesn't pollinate in the normal way. It doesn't pollinate at all. It cheats. It goes straight into the nectary from the side. There are other birds that do this. There's the flower piercers. This is a moustache flower piercer. And it has a little hooked bill for making a hole in the base of the flowers. And so the flowers protect themselves. Here you can see at the base of the corolla, you've got this little sheath. And here's a black metal tail using the hole that a flower piercer has already made to get straight to the nectary. So this bird, obviously, with that length bill, it cannot pollinate that flower. It can't feed from the nectaries. So it's cheating the system here, as is this black-tailed train bearer. This is feeding on one of these plants that was datura previously. This incredibly long thing that only sword-billed hummingbirds can feed at properly. And you can see just to the right of where the bill is going in, there's another hole and then another one a bit further down on the right. Those are holes made by flower piercers, and the black-tailed train bearer is taking advantage of using the holes made by the flower piercers. So trap lining, especially the hermits here, a Planalto hermit in Brazil. This is a fooding strategy when you've got patchy food resources across a large area. And there's two different types. You can have it with high yielding flowers and low yielding flowers. And often the birds that do this are real specialists. They have highly co-evolved bill shapes for flowers. So hermits and sicklebills are the prime examples of this. And they have optimized routes through the forest around their flower resources. So yesterday, as I was walking down the mountain, a couple of times I heard a squeak, and long-tailed hermit of the Central American subspecies flashed past me at high speed. And it's not stopping because it's going from patch to patch of flowers. And so hermits and sicklebills often are very fast through the forest. And to see them, you really need to hang out at a patch of flowers and wait for one to come. Then you get another feeding strategy is what you call territorial aggressive. About 30% of these species do this. So when there's a high yield food resource, like this Amazilia hummingbird in northwestern Peru, they will sit there and guard it and chase other things. Those of you who've been lucky enough to go to hummingbird feeders and things in the New World may well have seen this, that you get some species that just chase others off relentlessly, even though there's a liter of sugar solution there. Their strategy is when there's a high yield, you defend it and you guard it and fight. That's why they're such aggressive little birds. And then there's a third strategy, which is hide and wait. And these are the subdominant species. They're often quite cryptic. So here's a speckled hummingbird. This is this could be a male, you can't tell, but they're very calm. They sit generally back in the vegetation a little bit, and they're quite subdued colors, and they nip in and out, and they especially feed on the flowers that sort of more in the vegetation and things. So they exploit high yield food resources, while the dominant ones don't see them or are distracted by fighting each other. So those are the three main forms. And then there's the special one for the coquettes, thorntails, and woodstars. And a lot of these are very small. I said we talk about this group. They're very small. If you remember back to the coquette at the front and the picture where I said we talk about this, you see that white stripe above the tail and the short tail, and they have a very buzzy flight, a real hummy flight. And it's thought that they're mimicking bumblebees. So this allows them in. They're very small. They buzz around slowly, and they've got that stripe on. And it means that the dominant aggressives kind of give them a pass because they just put them into the world of, oh, those are bees and stuff. They will chase them off at times, but they get away with it a lot more. And so these are some of the most spectacular small hummingbirds. So let's talk about flight dynamics. Hummingbirds are quite amazing. They are the only bird that generates lift on both the upstroke and the downstroke. This allows them to hover, and it also allows them to fly backwards and even upside down. At level flight, they can reach 43 kilometers an hour. It looks like they're going a lot faster. It's amazing. You ask people what flies faster, an Andean condor or a hummingbird, they'll tell you a hummingbird. Well, it's doing an awful lot more of its own body length per second, but actually a condor can be doing 80 kilometers an hour. It just looks very slow because it's so big. But in display dives, they have been recorded up to nearly 100 kilometers an hour. Some species. This is a Kepke's hermit which is an endemic to northwestern, well, to the eastern outlying ridges in Peru. And here's a picture of a hummingbird. This is a swallow-tailed hummingbird taking out a somber hummingbird near a feeder in Brazil. And you can see I left the feeder in, so you can actually see that it really is flying upside down and stabbing at the other hummingbird. Even the little bee is getting out of the way as fast as it can. So really amazing acrobatic birds that really can fly upside down. So here's a giant hummingbird. This was when I used to live in Peru. This was in my garden from my bedroom window. And I just like this shot because it shows you the wing open very well. And you can see we've got 10 primaries, we've got 3 secondaries, and 3 tertials. So we've got a very foreshortened wing, very similar in structure to a swift in many ways, with even less secondaries. But so only 13 main flight feathers. And that's the same in all hummingbirds. And then they have 10 tail feathers. So heat regulation, this is a really interesting thing. They are running so fast, their metabolic rate is so high because they've got relatively low mechanical efficiency of the flight muscles, only 10 to 15%, which staggers me. That always blows my brain. It's like, how can they not be more efficient? But that's what bird flight muscles are, really. So they've got a problem. They're generating too much heat. And so they lose heat through evapotranspiration, radiative heat loss, and convection. And the main heat loss areas are the eyes, the feet, the armpits, the axilla, and the belly areas. This makes heat dissipation a challenge for hummingbirds in hot conditions. And this is probably why peak diversity is at about 2,000 meters. In the tropics, you lose about a degree Celsius for every 100, 120 meters you climb up. So at about 2,000 meters elevation in the Andes, it's about 17 degrees Celsius cooler than it would be at sea level in that same environment. And that's probably why they're peaking there, because they've got no down feather and stuff. They've got a problem. They're trying to get rid of heat. So that's probably why diversity is maximized at that elevation. They have a minimal flat layer and no down feathers, as I said. So in cold to very cold environments, they're fine in the daytime when they're generating enough heat, but they've got a problem at night because they can't eat. So most hummingbirds go into what's called shallow torpor at night. Some hummingbirds that are adapted to particularly high altitudes or extreme latitudes, where it gets even colder, go into what's called deep torpor at night. And here they're dropping their body temperature. It can be dropped to as low as 3 degrees Celsius. So that's a drop of 23 to 37 degrees on the daytime temperature, depending on the species, which is giving them a 60% energy saving overnight. So they're going into this deep, deep sleep, saving energy, and then they've just got to fire up in the morning enough to get out and get that first feed. So one of the interesting things as we come on to look at the colors of hummingbirds is birds don't see like we do. Birds see in a tetrachromatic color space. We see in a trichromatic color space. So the birds, we have 3 types of cone cells in our eyes. Birds have a 4th one that's seen well into the ultraviolet spectrum that we can't see. And this gives them not only a bigger range of colors and those ultraviolet colors that we can't see, but it also gives them more possibilities of interference colors. So an interference color is something like purple. So we don't have cone cells that can see purple. And this is why sometimes if you're a photographer, you take photos of a purple flower and it doesn't look right when you look at it on the screen, because our eyes are taking out of that, we're taking out a red peak and a blue peak and putting it together and creating purple in our brain. Well, because they've got four spaces, they can do it in a three-dimensional way compared with our kind of two-dimensional way, if you see what I mean, on color. And so hummingbirds are refracting light to generate color. So this is how structural color works in hummingbirds. So within the feather, you've got detail in the barbules. Most birds, like a northern cardinal here, you've got pigment granules under a layer of keratin that reflect the color of the bird. Hummingbirds are the light's coming in and it's bouncing off these melanin rodules. And these are creating reflection. It's a bit like the blue on a kingfisher, the blue on a morpho butterfly's wing, etc. It's a refraction thing. So it's not true color. And you can see here at the top left, three different structures of these rodules, and they can give different frequencies. And the other thing you can see to the right is you can see the reflection varies by angle. So a hummingbird's throat can look black at one angle, and as it turns to you, you get a flash of another color, because it's very directional. Here's the details of a rump. Those are the two wings on the left and the right of a shining sunbeam hummingbird. I think this was taken in Colombia. And you can see different colors coming off those different feathers as it goes down. And here are some of the color ranges. So you get pure colors in many species, and then you get confined frequency peaks to generate non-pure colors. Like this amethyst wood star is giving off this purple because it's got two frequency peaks. Whereas you can see a lot of the other hummingbirds are just giving off just with a single peak, but you get these colors that don't really exist. Excuse me a second. So we'll talk a little bit about breeding. They build small cup nests, generally out of plant fibers, using a lot of spider silk to bind it together, and a lot of little feathers in them. All hummingbird species generally lay 2 eggs. This is an oasis hummingbird nesting in an olive tree in a plantation in northern Chile. To the left here, you've got one of the hermits nesting. So they build them on these hanging tropical leaves, which shelter them from water and also good camouflage for snakes and things. And then to the right, you've got a fiery topaz nest along a Blackwater river. This is a dead tree that's fallen into the river, and you've got 2 bills sticking up. The left-hand bill is open, so it's two chicks showing in the nest there. So hummingbirds, for displaying, they make a variety. They sing and they make a variety of sounds, but they also make non-vocal sounds. Some of the wood stars especially, there's a very good paper on this. They actually separated the Bahama wood star into the Bahama and the Inagua wood star based on the differences in non-vocal sounds. They're using the tail like a snipe. So the purple collared wood star of the arid Andes of Colombia down to, I can't remember if it gets to Chile, but to Peru anyway. It does this amazing diving display, and it goes and for a long time it was thought it was a vocal kind of noise, but actually it turns out it's these tail feathers extended out, and you can see they're kind of kinked slightly, and so they're vibrating. It took me 2.5 days to get this photo of one doing it with its tail out, because they're doing it probably at nearly 100 kilometers an hour in these steep dives, and they're obviously making some vocal noise as well. Or they seem to make a tittering noise vocally, and then they're vibrating the tail at the same time, and you can see the throat is extended. So a female watching will also get the bright flash of purple with blue with the purple band at the bottom. You can see the lower left throat feathers look black from the angle we're showing them from, because they're designed to be straight on. So if we were straight on, we get that purple going further across. We're at the wrong angle for those feathers. Hummingbirds have a lot of predators. The tiny hawk, a very small accipitrine hawk, is a specialist on catching small birds in forest canopy and takes a lot of hummingbirds. And the various species of pygmy owl, I've seen Pacific pygmy owl catch a hummingbird once, and sorry, my light fell over. Oh. The pygmy owls are truly hated by hummingbirds. A very good way to see hummingbirds is play a pygmy owl tape, or find a pygmy owl and just watch. So the conservation situation of hummingbirds. Well, two species are sadly extinct. There's another one that's probably extinct. There are a few that are critically threatened, 8. There's quite a few endangered and vulnerable, but most of them are in least concern at the moment. All the threatened species, it's generally deforestation, habitat loss in the areas they were in, etc., or can be deforestation or even habitat burning in some places for cattle pastures, especially species that rely on bushes and things that can grow in grassland areas at high altitude that can take quite a long time to develop those bushes. If you burn it regularly, you lose those shrubs. So it's not a terrible situation, but there are certainly, what is that, 20, 34, 30, 36 species threatened or with extinction or something. So I'm just going to run you through a few of the nice hummingbirds that are out there, give you a bit more of diversity now. This is the crimson topaz. This is one of these, this first family I talked about with only 4 with the white-necked Jacobin. So here's one of the other 2 pairs. I only took this photo about 10 days ago in Guyana. A fantastic hummingbird that displays, a male displays along blackwater streams in lowland forest and feeds up on canopy trees and vines, or insect catches low over blackwater streams within dense forest. Here's the white-necked Jacobin that's also in that family, and here's the black Jacobin, much more range-restricted bird, endemic to eastern Brazil, down just creeps into Argentina, Paraguay, etc. So in the hermits, you've got a bunch of interesting species. This is a hook-billed hermit from eastern Brazil, quite a range-restricted, threatened species. This is Margaretta's great-billed hermit. It's only currently recognized as a subspecies of great-billed hermit, but may well deserve being considered a species. This is confined to a small area of eastern Brazil as well. This is one of the smallest of all hummingbirds. This is minute hermit, again from southeastern Brazil. This is so these are both the Margarettas and the minute hermit. They're on their song perches, so they sit there in these dispersed leks, just singing and singing and singing. So you can get in and get some quite nice pictures of them. Reddish hermit. This is a much more widespread small hermit that occurs in the Amazon and Andean foothills. Here's Kepke's hermit. Again, this one's from eastern Peru, endemic to outlying ridges, very disjunct, interesting distribution. And you can see here the classic ID features, these lovely cinnamon tipped tail feathers with the white central tail feathers hanging down. Then we go into the brilliants. These are some of the big ones. This is Empress brilliant. This is a one from the very humid forests of Colombia down into Ecuador. This is a nice male with that nice pink throat patch and that lovely glittering green gold belly. Rainbow bearded thornbill, the punk hummingbird with its little crazy crest and that amazing throat patch that just changes through all sorts of different colors. Very high Andean species, occurs in the sort of shrub zone at the elfin forest Paramo edge in the northern Andes from Venezuela down to extreme northern Peru. Wire-crested thorntail. So this is another one of these ones with this white band, a very small hummingbird that mimics a bumblebee. but these spectacular crest plumes and spectacular tail as well, and these lovely little chestnut boots. A real delight. You'll see this plant that he's perched on. It's called potterweed, and it's a favorite plant of many hummingbirds, and many hummingbird sort of birding lodges and things. A lot have now planted it. Fortunately, it doesn't tend to spread into natural environments. I mean, it is native to the Americas, but it's getting planted in garden settings, but it doesn't go into the wild very well. Black Inca, this is a Colombian endemic, restricted to the eastern Andes of Colombia. Inhabits very dense, shady forests. I don't really like using flash, but I did have to use flash on this one because it is such a dark environment they tend to live in. Here's the purple-collared wood star, the one that we had, and you can see again those kinks in those tail feathers, and there's the nice purple collar under that glowing blue throat. This is a crowned wood nymph, very colorful one. This is the subspecies that occurs on the Santa Marta Mountains of northern Colombia. This is Santa Marta wood star, again, one of these small bumblebee mimics. The wood stars are all green apart from this one that's endemic to the Santa Marta Mountains where he's become blue, which is quite spectacular with a bright red throat at the right angle. This is grey-bellied comet. This is sadly one of the most endangered hummingbirds, currently known from only a couple of sites in northern Peru. Usually, almost everyone who's seen it in the Chota River Valley, just outside the city of Cajamarca, at a site where we actually found. I was fortunate to be working with a couple of colleagues, and we went and searched for it and found the first ever nest there. Oh gosh, I think it was 2003, something like that. And there's now a little local, the BirdLife partner in Peru is working with another local NGO on trying to work with the community, reforestation and protection of the habitat, because habitat burning there was destroying the flowers. This is speckled hummingbird. Again, this is quite a variable species. This is an undescribed subspecies from the arid slopes of the Western Andes in northern Peru. Very long-tailed for that species, very white, a large bird, yet to be described. This is Bahama woodstar from the Bahamas. There's a male on the left and a female on the right, showing the fantastic throat difference. And you can see in the male that with the angle you're seeing at, the same feathers can go from looking like a deep purple, a bright sort of turquoise, or being green, or black, and it just varies on the angle you're getting. This is festive coquette, another one of these very small bumblebee mimics that occurs in the Amazon, Eastern Amazon. Green-bearded helmet crest. This is a very high altitude hummingbird that occurs near the city of Bogota in Colombia. Here's two males having a bit of a scrap, a nicer adult male on the right coming in, I think, to kick a younger male off the favored food plant. This is called Gould's jewel front. It's a brilliant. It's a Heliodoxa brilliant, but it's been called Gould's jewel front for so long that it will stay. It's the only brilliant that's not called a brilliant, but very nice name. Rufous capped thornbill, another high altitude forest edge bird from the Andes. Again, that lovely throat gorget. This is white tufted sunbeam. This is one of the, it's an endemic species to Peru, and there's two subspecies. This is the northern subspecies with this big white throat tuft. And he's got that lovely colorful back. We saw another sunbeam earlier. This is one of the most challenging birds. I'm doing a book on hummingbirds, and I've got to basically only maximum sort of two photos per species in general. And this one was particularly challenging to photograph because I need the female as well. This is the male, so he's got this purple bib. He's got the white spot behind the eye. You need to see the bill length and the glistening green around the face. But you've also got to see the white patch on the top of the upper tail. And I was absolutely delighted when I managed to get a photo with all those things in one photo. Ruby topaz hummingbird. This is quite a widespread one in the tropical lowlands. And it's amazing. When you see it in the field, it often looks just completely black. You see this sort of weird head shape on a silhouetted hummingbird sitting, and it's ruby topaz. But then when you get the light right on it, it absolutely blinds you with this beautiful gold throat. But you can see how the shade makes it different, the red and this super rufous tail. Here's Oasis hummingbird. This is the hummingbird that lives in the driest conditions in the world. Lives right down into the Chilean deserts. There's 3 subspecies. This is the North Chilean one. There's a much shorter billed one in northwestern Peru, which is the smallest one. A very spectacular hummingbird that can live in very arid areas. Brown violeteer. This is an interesting bird that this is an adult. You can see from the blue ears and the throat patch. This bird seems to maintain some kind of juvenile type plumage, I think, to go under the radar at flowering trees and stuff. You can see at the side of the beak, it's got like a yellow gape, like a chick, and it retains that as an adult. It's the only hummingbird that has that. Peruvian sheartail, nearly endemic to Peru, creeps into northern Chile and extreme southern Ecuador, down the coastal deserts. Here's a nice male. This is one of my absolute favorites, golden-bellied star frontlet, confined to quite a small area of the Andes near Bogota, and just the absolutely incredible colors on that. That lovely purple throat patch, the little green frontlet, and then that glistening green going into bright orangey gold on the belly. Spectacular hummingbird. There's another star frontlet. This is endemic to the Santa Marta Mountains of northern Colombia. Up at very high altitude, you've got the metal tail group, and they tend to be quite dull colored. This is a fiery throated metal tail, and we're not at the right angle. Actually, I think it is an immature male. But to see the orangey throat on this one. Another very high altitude hummingbird, the black-breasted hill star, this one from central Peru near Lake Junin. And it feeds only on, the hill stars feed only on this genus of plants that you can see it perched on here. Golden-breasted puffleg, another Andean bird from Colombia and Ecuador in the sort of humid upper Andean forests. Emerald-bellied puffleg from the eastern Andes of Peru and Ecuador. Absolutely beautiful. One of my favorites, that little emerald green blue patch on the belly around that little white chest patches and the little white puffs. Delightful little bird. Collared Inca, very highly variable bird, several subspecies of this, generally smart black and green bird with a big white collar on it, the males. Green-fronted lancebill. This is one of the 2 lancebill species. There's green-fronted and blue-fronted, and they have very long, straight bills, slightly upcurved. They generally live along streams where they feed on quite long corolla flowers, and they probably have one of the highest proportions of insects in their diet. You often see them hawking insects over these montane streams. Here's the shining sunbeam again, with that lovely sunbeam rump, lower back and rump. This is Lazuline saberwing. This is quite a deep forest bird. This is again taken in the Santa Marta Mountains in Colombia. This is copper-rumped hummingbird. This was actually the first hummingbird I ever saw in the wild when I first arrived in Venezuela 36 years ago. Drove out of the city and saw a hummingbird on the roadside wires, stopped, and it was one of these. And that was it. I was kind of hooked. Little wood star. This is one of the smallest birds on the planet. If it didn't have those long spiky tails, it would probably be right there with bee hummingbird in its size again. Half a tea bag dry weight for this. This is a nice male. Rufous crested coquette. Absolutely fantastic bird. Again, that white rump across, bumblebee mimic with these lovely orange feathers with the little black tufts on the end and the glistening green throat. Here's another coquette. This is the frilled coquette. This is from eastern Brazil. There's a whole bunch of these coquette species. Long-tailed wood nymph, very spectacular bird, quite endangered. occurs in northeastern Brazil in sort of Alagoas, Pernambuco area where there's hardly any forest left. So it really is confined to a few patches of forest, and it's an endangered species. Absolutely spectacular bird. Great sapphire. This is the second largest hummingbird, and it's one of the only birds that has refractive color on the flight feathers. Most of the hummingbirds have just brown, black flight feathers, maybe some color on the coverts. But here you can see going down onto the primaries and the secondaries, you've got the blue. And when it opens up, the whole wing is blue. And I think it's because it's large enough, the feathers are big enough and heavy enough, it can afford to carry that extra layer of structural color on those feathers. Rainbow star frontlet, a bird from, this is the one of the northwestern or sort of central northern Peru subspecies. There's a whole bunch of subspecies with slightly different crest colors and throat colors and things. When I was first working in southern Ecuador, there wasn't a bird book for Ecuador then, we had a bird book for Colombia. So we had to give everything a nickname and then go to the museum later and try and work out what we've been seeing and studying. And this one we call Big Red Hummer. So Peruvian racket tail. So some of the hummingbirds have these amazing, we've seen some ornamentations on the head. We're now going to see some tail ornamentations. This is Eastern Andes of Peru going up into Ecuador. And it has cross tail feathers. Some of you, if you've been to northwestern Ecuador, you may have seen white-booted racket tail. But Peruvian racket tail has these buff boots and the cross tail feathers. Long-tailed sylph, one of the largest hummingbirds in the world by body length, if you include the whole tail. This is the subspecies in the central Andes of central Colombia. And perhaps arguably the most spectacular hummingbird on the planet, marvelous spatule tail, confined to one bank of the Utcubamba River, which is a small tributary of the Marañón in northern Peru. Well, it does creep across onto the other slope in two places, but basically it's only on the eastern side of the Utcubamba drainage. And it's a very interesting, it's, I believe, the only bird in the world where the male has a different number of tail feathers to the female. So the male has these two central tail feathers, which are spikes, and then the next pair of tail feathers are these long, spectacular rackets that do almost a 90-degree bend, and they have control over them. So when they're displaying, they can bring them right up around the head. It's an absolutely tiny bird. The body is minuscule. It's quite big because of the length of the tail. It's subdominant to almost all the other hummingbirds. It gets chased by everything when there's good feeding. So it tends to hang out in dense habitats. Here it is in flight again, showing those two rackets, how they often go together. The first time I ever saw one of these, I saw it fly across a hillside quite a long way away, and my brain interpreted it as a hummingbird being chased by two skipper butterflies or something like that. And I was like, no, that must be it. Skippers can't fly that fast, but it really looked like there were two butterflies chasing the hummingbird. So here's the female. So much duller, and she has 10 tail feathers. So you can't see them all there, but so the male has 10 follicles for the tail feathers, but 6 of them don't emerge. But I believe in the entire bird world, it's the only one where that's true. I mean, there's things like peacocks, obviously, but the big fan tail, those aren't tail feathers, those are greater tail coverts, upper tail coverts. So it really, for true rectrices, it's the only one. And here's the bird that I was looking at for the last few days. I just went 1,200 meters up a mountain called Cerro Hoya to try and see this very rare and seldom recorded hummingbird, glow-throated hummingbird, and get some pictures for the book I'm working on. And I was very pleased to get this male 2 days ago in about this time of the afternoon. He was a bit distant. He's a very small hummingbird, but it is, I believe, the best photo of a male yet. And so that was a very pleasing result to my trip. So, well, thank you very much for listening. I hope that was about, yeah, just under an hour. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Rob. Absolutely fascinating. I mean, what wonderful birds. Uh, it's just, I mean, that racket tail, I was sitting there thinking, what is that for? And then you explained it, it's for display, but fantastic. Let's have a look. Have we got any questions from folks? The first one says, my question's already been answered, as I thought I'd read somewhere, swifts and hummingbirds are indeed distantly related. Um, so I made a note earlier. How many species did you say there were across the world?
366, roughly.
366. And have you managed to see most of those for your book, or?
I've seen about 330, I think.
Wow.
And I'm not trying to get photos of all of them. So like the ones in Mexico that have been Mexico's the country where I've got most to see. Those photos exist. So, but I was particularly keen to get this one because there aren't very good photos. There are a couple of photos I could have used, but I also wanted to see it. It's basically glow-throated hummingbird. There's a real mix-up in the museums. A whole bunch of the females
Hmm.
are probably mislabeled scintillant hummingbirds. So there's a big because in the central mountains of Panama, both species occur. And I've been looked for them there in the past, and I've come away going, well, I only saw male scintillants, and I saw a whole bunch of females that are really hard to identify. So I didn't know if I'd seen a glow-throated, and no one really kind of understood. So the nice thing about Serra Hoya is there are no scintillant hummingbirds; they're only glow-throated. So you see a female up there, you're looking at a female glow-throat. So you could then, so that's what I went up to do was really look at how the tail differs from scintillant hummingbird in the females, and I've got a whole bunch of photos of females and immature males as well. Which was important for the book because the new Central American field guide that came out a few years ago said they say in the text actually, well, our illustration might not be typical because we've only got one that we know is that one
Right.
specimen based the
So your
illustration.
photographs are equally important for science as they are for your book.
Uh, well, yeah, I guess so, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
there are other photos, but yeah, I wanted to get my own and see it and understand it and see how it looks different. So the male's quite different, the throat color is different, and the tail length is different. So I saw an immature male, I was like, instantly on tail length, I could tell, but the females are much more subtle. So
Right.
the difference, but as no one's, it's only glowthroats up here. And yesterday we only saw what looked like glowthroats. Whereas in the
Yeah.
other place, I mean, I'm not even sure. You look on eBird at the records, I think there's like 50 ever eBird records of glow-throated hummingbird. And probably most of them are, but it's very hard. I'm sure some people in the central mountains go to a place because other people have seen glow-throated hummingbird there, see one, and oh, it was a glow-throat. Well, was it, or was it a scintillant? Because they're both there. So
Thanks. I mean, we've got some other questions here, Rob. So generally everyone's saying what a fantastic presentation. But question here, do we know what makes hummingbirds so colourful? Is it diet related or is there some other reason?
it's sexual selection. It's the girls like it.
The girls
So
like it. Okay.
yeah, the females like it. So it's displayed between them, it's aggression, it's get out. The males can turn and flash that gorget at another one, dominance, but basically it's driven for food resources and sexual selection.
Okay. I think I've got someone here who wants to buy your book because they're asking when's it going to be published?
Hopefully launched at the Bird Fair 27.
Oh, next year. Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
hopefully, but I've got a little bit more writing to do than I'd like. The stage I'm at. But the next 3 weeks, I get home on Tuesday, and the next 3 weeks will kind of. I've said to my publisher, I'll talk to her after that.
Right.
My editor, let her know how it's going. So, I've got
And
to have a productive 3 weeks.
what's the title of the book, Rob? Is that decided
Well,
on?
it's hummingbirds. I mean, it's in the series like there's woodpeckers and owls of the world, but
Yeah,
like hummingbirds of the world, well, there aren't any in most of the world. It's almost a bit redundant. So I think it's just going to be hummingbird.
hummingbirds. Yeah,
So
brilliant.
that'll be up to the publisher as much as to me. So
Right.
um,
Um, so someone else said, do you genuinely think that those that are in trouble have hope for the future? Are there initiatives in place to help?
yes, generally speaking, they are quite fortunate that they're attractive birds, so it's quite easy for conservation NGOs to get resources to do
Mhm.
conservation work on them. There is still scope for more work. There are one or two. I mean, if turquoise-throated puffleg still exists, that's the one that's critically endangered or possibly extinct. If it still exists, it's in really big trouble unless there's something, we really don't know about it. But it
Mhm.
basically, the habitat's all gone. There was a possible sighting in the 70s. There was a possible, I went and looked and looked and looked and saw something but it was so quick. I was like, oh, was it? And I spent 2 more days there and didn't see it again. So,
Right.
and that was in the late 90s, I think. So, but probably, yeah, there may have been a sighting in the 70s. The last confirmed thing is from like the 40s.
And
So,
most of this is
um,
deforestation, is it?
yeah, it lived in a small area in northern Ecuador, and all the forest's gone basically, apart from one little canyon, and there's
Right.
probably not enough there. Um, there are others like black-breasted puffleg that are in big trouble. The bird fair no, not last year, the year before, 24, I guess, raised money for that, for conservation of that species in Ecuador. So yeah, there are initiatives for most of them. So there are some that are, we need. Fortunately, they breed quite fast. So
Okay.
if you can, and a lot of them, the plants can grow quite quickly. So if you can, things like the grey-bellied comet, there are not many pairs, but if you can plant plants for it and expand the habitat out, hopefully it will be okay. The
And
grey-bellied comet is certainly one of the most at risk ones.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that most of them lay around about two eggs.
Yeah.
Is the success rate 100% or is it
No, no, no. They
no?
have nest predators, and they can have bad weather and fail. All sorts of things can happen. But yeah, no, yeah, they lay basically two eggs a year. There are
So if
some
they have
species
a
that can
sorry,
breed a couple of times a year, but a lot only breed once a year.
so if they have a nest failure, it's they don't necessarily have a second brood.
They will often retry if they
Right,
fail
okay. Yeah.
eggs or something. Yeah.
Another question we've got here is that is climate change an emerging risk factor for many of the species?
It must be for some of the montane ones and the climate dependent ones. We're going to see changes in the climate.
Yeah.
And some of the higher elevation ones might run out of habitat, just can't move up the mountain anymore. So,
Yeah. And one of our colleagues here has said that on the basis that the ladies like the strong colours, he's going to go out and buy some more colourful t-shirts.
right. Very good.
But what's your next target species?
So tomorrow I'm getting on a boat and going to an island just offshore called Isla Coiba, and I'm going to see an endemic subspecies of the scaly-breasted hummingbird, which is one of the least attractive, but but it's quite a distinct subspecies, and so I want to go and see that because I'm here basically.
Yeah.
I was going to go to a different island where there's a very large subspecies of rufous-tailed hummingbird. The handy eye subspecies is only known from one island called Escudo de Veraguas off northern Panama, but it's a national park and they've closed it this year to all visitors because there was mass tourism and there was litter and they
Right.
were in the trails and things. And unfortunately, I had to cut short my visit 5 years ago when I was going to go there. And so I thought I'd go this time. So I called up the guy with the boat and said, "Can you take me?" And he goes, "No, I can't take you there." I said, "I can take you out and we can sail around it. We can't land." I was like, "No, that doesn't work for me. I need to."
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, because I always wondered about whether that really should be separated as different species, but I can't get there. So um, and then I'm going to be in Guatemala later this year, and there's a whole bunch there for me. So,
Right.
but yeah,
Fantastic.
no, I'm nearly done with photos of my own now. Most of the others I've got people offering me photos of, or I'm
Right.
going to try and chase down. Basically, I need to write now. So I had a terrible bronchitis in December and January, and I lost 3 weeks. I had programmed for strict writing, so
Oh,
I'm
well. Yeah.
3 weeks
Yeah.
behind where I should be this year already.
Yeah. Well, on that note, then, let's just have a look of any more questions. Um, no, people are saying superb talk. Thank you so very, very much. I'll echo that. I mean, I think that was fascinating, and a huge amount to take away from that. I mean, I knew nothing about hummingbirds apart from the fact that they were cute, pretty little birds. But you've really opened up all of our eyes, I think. So thank you very much. Appreciate it's late afternoon there. So hopefully dinner's beckoning.
No, I think there's going to be a cold beer on the veranda watching hummingbirds.
Oh, that sounds even better.
So, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, no,
I'm
that's
sitting
fine.
here in a pair of shorts.
Lovely.
So,
Well, Rob, thank you very much.
great.
Again, that's great. So yeah, I mean, everyone's saying absolutely amazing, brilliant talk. Um, so that's really good. Let me just. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thanks very much. Bye.
Great. Thank you.
Right, so Rob, just before you go, um, we had 54 people viewing tonight.
Okay, great.